there was too many minutes. He was playing too many darn minutes. I actually was covering that game, and he was playing 35 something minutes, and I'm all for him playing every game. That's not the thing, but playing 35 minutes, I just felt like it was a lot, and it's natural. I can tell you, it wears on you regardless of what your body is talking to you, saying, okay, we need to slow back. So obviously you take practice time off. We know he doesn't like to miss practice, and he wants to play in games, and he's playing to win. I get it, but maybe not.
Vince Carter just reignited one of basketball's oldest debates, and this time, people are paying attention for a reason. Because this isn't coming from some random talking head chasing headlines. It's coming from a Hall of Famer who spent more than 20 years in the league, battled through both conferences, and earned the kind of respect where fans actually stop and listen when he speaks. Now the spotlight is back on LeBron James and those 8 straight finals appearances, one of the most impressive streaks in modern basketball history. But the real argument isn't just about the number itself. It's about the path. A recent clip making the rounds online reopened the same question fans have argued about for years. Would those finals runs have looked the same if LeBron had spent that entire stretch in the Western Conference instead of the East? And that's where the conversation gets complicated. Because during a lot of those years, the West was viewed as a basketball war zone. Teams were winning 50 games just to fight for lower playoff seeds. You had dynasties, MVPs, veteran superstars, and brutal playoff matchups from the very first round. Meanwhile, critics argue the East often lacked that same depth at the top. But LeBron supporters push back hard on that idea. Their argument is simple: dominating any conference for nearly a decade straight is almost impossible in itself. Injuries, roster changes, coaching turnover, pressure, expectations, all of it changes year to year. Yet somehow, LeBron kept finding a way to reach the finals no matter which rosters surrounded him. That's why this debate never really dies. One side sees 8 straight finals as proof of unmatched consistency and control over an era. The other sees a path that may have been easier than what stars in the West had to survive. And when someone like Vince Carter weighs in, the conversation instantly carries more weight because he actually lived through both realities firsthand.
Maybe you preserve him in the first half, and you play your bigger minutes in the second half when he gets better. So I just feel like you have to find time to dial him back, because do you need LeBron James more in the beginning of the season when AD's playing like this, or do you need him from the middle to the back end of the year? I think you need him.
And that's really where this entire controversy lives. Nobody is saying LeBron James wasn't dominant. Nobody is pretending his accomplishments aren't historic. The real debate is about what kind of dominance it was and how much the context around those finals runs should matter. Because on paper, LeBron's resume is unbelievable. 10 finals appearances. 8 straight from 2011 to 2018. A streak so rare that even the league itself has described it as one of the greatest runs in NBA history. At first glance, that sounds like the end of the discussion. But this is exactly where Vince Carter and a lot of critics push back. Their argument isn't about whether LeBron was elite, it's about the road he had to take to get there. And once you start looking beyond the headline numbers, the conversation gets a lot more complicated. During much of that final streak, the Western Conference was stacked with powerhouse teams, MVP-level stars, and brutal playoff matchups from top to bottom. Meanwhile, the Eastern Conference often didn't have the same depth or overall strength. That's been backed up by analysts and statistical breakdowns for years, and it's the exact context Carter's comments tap into. That's why the debate hits such a nerve with LeBron fans. Because if you only focus on the finals appearances themselves, the story feels simple: 8 straight trips equals total dominance. But once people start comparing the level of competition between conferences, suddenly the conversation shifts from achievement to circumstance. And that's what makes this debate so uncomfortable. It forces people to ask a tougher question: how much should context matter when we evaluate greatness?
But it's about the other guys playing well and being aggressive.
And by the other guys playing well, it allows him to rest. He doesn't have to exert so much energy in the first quarter like he had to do when he scored 21, 24 points in game 2, when he scored 24 points and they still were down and he ran out of gas.
Yeah.
And I mean, he's human. He's going to run out of gas. So those guys exerting themselves in the first quarter and just really just doing what they're doing in the first quarter helps him.
And that is really the center of this entire debate. Nobody is saying LeBron James was not dominant. Nobody is pretending he didn't own the Eastern Conference for nearly a decade. The argument is about context. It's about how much the road matters when we talk about greatness. On paper, LeBron's resume looks almost untouchable. 10 NBA Finals appearances, 8 straight trips from 2011 through 2018. That kind of consistency feels unreal in today's league. But Vince Carter sparked controversy because he challenged the way people interpret those numbers. His point wasn't that LeBron wasn't great, it was that raw finals appearances can hide how different the competition was depending on the conference, and honestly, that's where the conversation gets uncomfortable for a lot of fans. Because if you only look at the headline stats, the story feels simple. LeBron made the finals almost every year, so the debate should be over. But once you zoom in and look at the actual landscape of the league during that era, things start looking a little more complicated. The Western Conference during those years was brutal, not just good, brutal. You had the Los Angeles Lakers during the end of the Kobe era, the San Antonio Spurs dynasty, the rise of the Oklahoma City Thunder with Kevin Durant and Russell Westbrook, the Dallas Mavericks title run, the Golden State Warriors dynasty, the Lob City Los Angeles Clippers, and the high-powered Houston Rockets teams. Every playoff round in the West felt like a war. You weren't just trying to survive one contender. You were fighting through multiple championship-level teams before you could even think about the finals. Meanwhile, the East often looked much thinner at the top. During LeBron's Miami Heat years, the path to the finals frequently felt more manageable. The Boston Celtics dynasty was aging out. The Indiana Pacers were competitive, but not viewed on the same level as the elite Western powers. Teams like the Toronto Raptors and Atlanta Hawks had strong regular seasons, but they rarely felt like true championship favorites. And that's really what Carter's argument comes down to, not that LeBron didn't dominate, but that the environment gave him a clearer runway than stars in the West had during the same stretch. That distinction matters. One version of the argument says LeBron's greatness is overrated. The other says his greatness came in a conference that simply wasn't as deep or as dangerous night after night. Those are two very different conversations, but online debates usually smash them together until all nuance disappears. That's why fans split into camps almost instantly. One side hears disrespect toward LeBron's legacy, the other hears basketball context that's been ignored for years, and both sides believe they're defending the truth. The reality is probably somewhere in the middle. LeBron still had to deliver. He still had to stay healthy, dominate series, handle pressure, and keep teams together for nearly a decade straight. That level of sustained excellence is rare no matter what conference you play in. But at the same time, pretending the East and West were equally difficult during those years just doesn't line up with how most people experienced that era of basketball. And that's exactly why this debate keeps exploding every time a former player like Vince Carter speaks up. Because once you start asking whether greatness should be measured by accomplishments alone or by the difficulty of the path, there's no clean answer anymore.
As far as inspiration, I didn't take much inspiration from Vince. But I've always admired his ability to do what he did on the floor. This man would jump out of any gym, and that you always kind of had that wild moment when you saw Vince play. But I didn't have much inspiration from him. I gained inspiration from other people.
LeBron's move to the Western Conference made this debate even more complicated. When LeBron James joined the Los Angeles Lakers in 2018, the entire basketball world expected business as usual. People assumed the final streak would continue. Instead, his very first season in the West ended without a playoff appearance. And whether fans want to admit it or not, that became one of the strongest arguments for Vince Carter and anyone else who believes conference strength mattered more than people acknowledged at the time. After 8 straight finals runs in the East, LeBron arrived in the West and immediately ran into a completely different level of competition. Injuries were obviously part of the story. Nobody serious is ignoring that, but the larger point still stands. The Western Conference didn't offer the same kind of runway the East had during most of LeBron's final streak. That doesn't erase what he accomplished. 8 straight finals appearances is still one of the craziest achievements in modern sports. 10 total finals appearances is still historic. But what Carter's comments force people to confront is that numbers never exist in isolation. Stats live inside context. Conference strength matters, era matters, roster construction matters, injuries matter, competitive balance matters, and once you start looking at all of that together, the conversation becomes a lot more layered than just counting finals trips and championships. That's really the core of Carter's argument. If you strip away the context and only read the scoreboard, you're not really analyzing basketball anymore. You're just reading numbers without asking how those numbers were created. What also makes this discussion more interesting is that Carter doesn't come across like someone trying to tear LeBron down. Over the years, he's spoken respectfully about LeBron's longevity and even talked publicly about how much wear and tear comes with carrying that kind of burden for so long. That matters because it changes the tone of the criticism. This doesn't sound like bitterness. It sounds more like a veteran player looking at the bigger picture and saying, hold on, let's not ignore the environment these accomplishments happened in. And honestly, that's why people are taking the comments seriously. Carter has credibility. He played against multiple eras of stars. He saw both conferences firsthand. He understands how brutal the Western playoff grind used to be, so when he brings up context, fans don't just dismiss it as random internet noise. At the same time, LeBron supporters are going to push back hard, and understandably so, because even with all the context in the world, sustaining greatness for that long is incredibly difficult. Conference strength alone doesn't explain 8 straight finals appearances. You still have to dominate the teams in front of you. You still have to stay healthy, adapt, lead, and deliver under pressure year after year. That's why this debate keeps going in circles. One side sees context as necessary basketball analysis. The other side sees it as moving the goalposts to downplay LeBron's greatness. And honestly, both perspectives have some truth to them. Because the deeper you dig into the GOAT debate, the harder it becomes to separate accomplishments from circumstances. And once you realize that, you also realize why basketball fans will probably never fully agree on what greatness is supposed to look like.
He was playing 35 something minutes, and I'm all for him playing every game. That's not the thing, but playing 35 minutes, I just felt like it was a lot.
The reason this debate keeps exploding is that the NBA itself has leaned heavily into legacy culture. Every great player gets measured against every other great player, and every achievement quickly turns into an all-time ranking discussion. LeBron James has been in the center of that conversation for most of his career, and over the years he's often pushed back against ring culture and the idea that a career can be reduced to a simple win-loss or championship tally. So when Vince Carter brings up the idea that the Eastern Conference path was easier during LeBron's final streak, it doesn't land as just another opinion. It hits right into a debate that has already been running for years, and that's why the reaction gets so heated. It's not just about one quote, it's about everything surrounding LeBron's legacy narrative. A lot of fans also react strongly because Carter is putting into words something that's been discussed quietly for a long time. People have always known the Western Conference was stacked during that era. Teams like the San Antonio Spurs, Oklahoma City Thunder, and later the Golden State Warriors created a level of competition that felt different from what many Eastern contenders were dealing with. But saying it out loud in the context of LeBron's 8 straight finals run changes the tone. It forces fans to re-examine the story they've been telling themselves about those years. Suddenly, those finals appearances don't look like a simple, universal measure of dominance. They look like an achievement that still depends heavily on context to fully understand. At the same time, that doesn't erase anything LeBron James accomplished. He still did something almost no player in NBA history has managed. He carried teams across multiple eras, stayed healthy enough to sustain elite production for over a decade, and kept winning deep into a physically demanding career. The real argument is narrower than it often appears online. It's not about whether LeBron was great. It's about whether the Eastern Conference path made reaching the finals more attainable compared to the Western grind of that same era. Those are very different claims, but they often get mixed together in fan debates, which is where things start to break down. What makes this even more complicated is that LeBron's move west actually strengthened both narratives at the same time. His supporters point to the championship he later won with the Los Angeles Lakers as proof he could still succeed in a tougher environment. Critics point to his first season in the West as evidence of how quickly the competitive landscape changed. And that's why this conversation refuses to settle, because depending on which part of the timeline you focus on, you can build two completely different but still statistically supported stories about greatness.
Regardless of if LeBron is playing great, I feel like he should be the guy you should throw your jabs at, and because he can take it. He can handle it, because now if I can go at LeBron and AD, I can go at anybody and everybody falls in line. Or they have to fall in line. Because if I could go at the best player, I could go at guys who don't play much and expect the world from these guys, because I expect the world from them.
If I'm JJ, I'm pulling LeBron aside.
I agree.
I'm pulling LeBron aside and say, listen, I'm about to jump you, man, in front of the team. Hey, don't take it personal, but I am going to get in your ass right now just so I can send a message.
Team. You were on the team in Dallas when Carlisle went at Dirk like that.
Yeah. He pulled basically Dirk aside and said, listen, I'm going to go out. Don't take it personal, but I am going to try and gain.
That's good leadership.
That's
correct. And when we saw that, we're like, well, damn, if he's going to go at this Hall of Famer, what can we say?
Right.
We got to tighten up.
At the end of the day, Vince Carter isn't really trying to tear down LeBron James. His point is more about refusing to ignore context when we evaluate greatness. That's exactly why this debate keeps resurfacing every time people revisit LeBron's final streak. If you focus purely on volume and consistency, LeBron's run looks almost unmatched. If you shift the focus to opponent strength and conference difficulty, Carter's argument starts to feel more persuasive. That tension is what makes NBA history so endlessly debated, because greatness can be real and still interpreted in different ways depending on what you value most. And maybe that's the cleanest way to understand it. Carter didn't destroy LeBron's legacy or rewrite what he accomplished. He pushed people to look at it with a more demanding lens. The 8 straight finals appearances are still historic. The 10 total finals trips are still an all-time resume. But once the conversation includes context like conference strength, injuries, and competition level, it forces fans to ask a question that usually gets skipped. How much of that dominance was about LeBron himself, and how much was shaped by the path he had to navigate? That's the part people will keep arguing about, and honestly, that's why the debate isn't going anywhere.